Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, the show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. If you're looking for a podcast to keep you informed and ahead of the game in business, the GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
Welcome. You are listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Maya and I will be your host for the show. Thank you so much for listening in today. I really appreciate having you guys all here and listening in. I'm excited to be here with you guys. We have so many things that we can talk about here and a lot to go over. There are constantly things going on in business news, and I'm super happy to be the one to be able to bring you the news. So I wanted to go ahead and start off, just let you guys know that we're going to be covering a huge variety of topics, everything business related. That's going to involve things like very urgent business. It's going to include hopefully nothing that is too numerically focused, but definitely there's going to be a little bit of drama involved in some of this news. Let's go ahead and get started. So we do have some interesting news from CollegeHumor, actually. They recently lost funding from their parent company, IAC, Interactive Corporations. Sam Reach was actually the one that I found this news from, as he tweeted about this news pretty recently on Twitter, just letting the public know that he was going to be the one to begin taking over the company as IAC let go of CollegeHumor. They did let him take over the company, so he has control not only as just being in charge of everything, but he is the majority shareholder. So IAC is still going to maintain minority share, but as Sam Reach is the majority shareholder, he's going to be kind of taking the reins from this point on and moving along with it. So along with CollegeHumor, everything that kind of goes along with that, there's a lot of elements that come along with CollegeHumor, like Drawfee, Dorkly, and other projects and companies that have kind of stemmed off from CollegeHumor. But because of this change from IAC, I suppose it looks like they were just losing funding for some period of time. Their popularity and their ratings online were dropping, even though they had 30,000 views. I believe every month they had 30,000, not views, but they had 30,000 users or subscribers every month. But that's just, to be honest, not enough on the online world. So it looks like, just as a result of these numbers continuing to decline, and just losing their popularity, they were just going down and losing funding for actually quite some time. They were struggling. And just as a result of this, IAC decided that they no longer wanted their responsibility. They no longer wanted that financial burden. And so they allowed Sam Reach to take over the company. But over 100 people have lost their jobs or been laid off as a result of this transition. Sam Reach expressed a little bit of concern, and a little bit of sadness, I would say. But he also hopes to be a little bit optimistic about this transition and definitely is putting a lot of passion into it. You can tell from his words and from his actions moving forward that he's really putting a lot of heart and soul into trying to keep the company afloat. He is asking for fans to continue their subscriptions, continue their support. Obviously, he's not looking for monetary support, but he is looking for support as far as just keeping up with the fandom, I suppose. In his opening tweet to announce this news, just to quote it directly for you guys, he tweeted, "So bad news with a twist. IAC, our parent company, has made the difficult decision to no longer finance us. Today, 100 plus brilliant people lost their jobs, some of whom are my dear, dear friends. Hire them." The twist, however, is that IAC has agreed to let me run with the company myself. In words that I'm sure are as surreal to read as they are to type, I will soon become the new majority owner of CH Media. So this started a huge thread of conversation on Twitter just from other people who either work currently for CH Media, which is the media company that is associated with CollegeHumor, obviously standing for CollegeHumor Media. But it just started this whole conversation of people who either previously worked there or currently working there, just expressing their feelings about the situation. So many of them had been with the company since they started in 1999. So they've been around for quite some time, just providing humor and entertainment online to mostly a younger audience of people who were just looking for online entertainment. They had a series of skits, YouTube videos, articles that were released, all kinds of things going on online with CollegeHumor, typically targeted towards college-age people or other people who have college-type humor, I suppose you could say. It was originally founded in 1999, like we just said, by Josh Abramson and Ricky Van Veen, who were college freshmen at the time that they founded the company. It was then bought by IAC in 2006, and that's when it became CH Media. In 2011, one of the founders, Josh Abramson, had left to return to a t-shirt business that he previously started, so he returned to that business. And Ricky Van Veen left in 2016 to join a Facebook creative content strategy team. It was reported by Bloomberg in October that IAC was looking to sell CollegeHumor or CH Media because of lack of funding and just financial issues with the company themselves. It was definitely looking unprofitable according to Reach as well, but like we said, he's just reaching out for fan support. He did mention that he has at least 6 months left of content to release. But I'm just a little bit curious as far as that 6 months worth of content. Is there going to be funding or support enough for them to continue putting out material after the 6-month mark is up? Or are we really just looking at the end of CollegeHumor as a company and as an online presence? Are these 6 months going to be the last that we see of them? And for a lot of us who were kind of growing up with CollegeHumor kind of always in the background, you saw it online, it was retweeted, it was on your Facebook, it was on your Instagram feeds, it was everywhere. And a lot of these videos were viral. They were a big deal. And so there's so many skits and pieces from CollegeHumor that have become part of popular culture and really just have pervaded our sense of humor. So it's a little bit sad to watch them go. Hopefully they'll be able to keep their head afloat. We'll see. The company is left with a team of 5 to 10 people. So it's a very small club who's really putting a lot of heart and soul into trying to keep CollegeHumor afloat. In the meantime, if you do want to support CollegeHumor, they have a subscription streaming service called Dropout, and Reach is asking that people stay subscribed or begin subscribing if you have never subscribed to Dropout. So if you're interested in supporting CollegeHumor or just want to see what they're all about, go ahead and check out Dropout and stay subscribed to their subscription streaming service just so that you can keep up with what's going on. And hopefully you'll enjoy some of the skits, videos, articles, etc. that they put out, because I personally have found plenty of them to be perfectly entertaining, and it is a really good site. Take a look at it and let me know what you think. When we come back, we will be talking about the Boeing CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, who was just recently fired from Boeing following a couple of not so great incidents. So hang tight, and we'll be right back after the commercial break.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
Welcome back. You are listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Maya, and I'm your host. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We just went over the potential demise of CollegeHumor. If you've been around in the past 2 decades and had an online presence or any interest in ridiculous humor, then you probably are familiar with CollegeHumor, and we're a little bit sad to see them potentially be leaving us. We'll see how they do in the next 6 months, though. Hopefully Sam Reach can keep up with it and maybe draw in enough fan base that we can keep up with CollegeHumor. So up next, we have just reported today the formal announcement that Boeing's CEO Dennis Muilenburg was fired. He was actually fired in December, so it's been a little bit of a process of him leaving the company, but it makes sense because it's such a big company. There's so much for him to wrap up as he leaves, steps down, and as they prepare for someone to take his place. There had been speculation for several months within the company and also outside of the company about Muilenburg being fired. He was actually stripped of his chairman's title in October. And this is really following the 2 fatal crashes that took place earlier, which one of them was in Ethiopia, the other one was in Indonesia. You may remember those incidents. We'll go over those in just a little bit, but just staying on track right now, following those crashes, I mean, it really, really dampened the reputation of Boeing as a company and put so much distrust on them from other jetliners, from other airlines, from everybody really in the industry. It was really looking down on Boeing. And so as CEO, there was obviously a lot of blame put on Muilenburg for this. As a result of those crashes, the production of their bestseller, the 737 MAX jetliner, had been completely halted. And it looks like they had been looking for or anticipating actually an increase in production of the 737 MAX jetliner. So when this was completely halted after these crashes, the company took a big hit, not only financially, but also just reputation-wise. And it affected also those who were involved in the production itself. So it looks like Dennis Muilenburg, as he was fired, had taken with him a $62 million long-term incentive, stock awards, pension benefits package. I think he'll be doing okay with those $62 million. If I had $62 million after being fired, I would be all right. However, he did forfeit $14.6 million and received no severance package. Nonetheless, like I said, I think he'll be okay with his $62 million. For some reason, in 2019, he did offer to give up his bonus and stock awards. There was really no mention of this as to why he offered to give those up. Maybe it was an attempt to appease his higher-ups, potentially, because it looks like those bonuses and stock awards could have been somewhere around the $20 million range if they were matching his numbers from 2018. In 2018, his bonus and stock awards reached $20 million. So he did offer to give that up. I think that was a last-ditch effort just to hang on to his last string and potentially maintain his position as the CEO of Boeing. But looks like it wasn't enough of an offer, and they just couldn't justify keeping him in the position of CEO. I think just amongst the industry and in the public eye, it wasn't excusable, especially in the eyes of the families and people who were affected by those two plane crashes. From those two plane crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, they occurred within 5 months of each other, and 346 people died. It was not good. So it is obviously not a surprise that the company had to do something about it. They had to do a lot about it. But one of those things was just that they could not keep their current CEO in place. It just makes sense. So that was their response. Really, Boeing had no other option. There was no last-ditch effort that was going to save him and keep his position. So, but even though he gave up the $20 million, he lost his position, he still received $62 million. As far as the forfeited $14.6 million and no severance, it looks like that was just contractual. Boeing had responded to this and just let us know that he received the benefits to which he was contractually entitled. And that is a quote from Boeing. It looks like this isn't super unusual as far as their structure when they let someone go. Kevin McAllister was the former CEO who was fired in October. He had also forfeited $52.9 million in uninvested equity and other compensation. So it looks like Muilenburg is going to be replaced by a board chairman from Boeing. His name is David Calhoun. He is a former executive of General Electric. He has a lot of experience helping companies that are struggling to keep their heads above water. So the company has a lot of faith in him and a lot of hope in him. And it looks like they're really, really expecting him to recover Boeing from this major damage to the reputation, major damage to the company financially. They're really going to put a heavy hand on Calhoun and expect him to lift everything back up to what they hope to be at. He is starting off at a base salary of $1.4 million a year, and he's also eligible for $26.5 million in long-term incentive compensation. So it looks like if anyone is interested in being a future CEO of Boeing, all of you youngins out there, it's not a bad position to be in. Just make sure that you watch out for your PR. So I do want to talk about what happened with the 737 MAX, this jetliner that crashed twice. It looks like there had potentially been some internal concern about the jetliner that is just now being released. Obviously, this is something to be looked into. Why is there so much issue with this? The families who were affected, the people who died on these planes, they should have known or had some warning. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do if someone that I knew was on one of these planes and then it comes out that they had internal concern about the plane. It's really not good. There were internal messages that were released recently that included very harsh criticism of the plane's development. I don't know exactly who these comments are coming from, if they're coming from the engineers, from the designers, from whoever. So it's not explicitly described who made these comments, but one of the comments that was included was that, quote, "the planes were designed by clowns who in turn are supervised by monkeys," end quote. Yikes. This is not what you want to hear when it comes to something like an airplane that seats hundreds of people. You would like to hear this is designed with the utmost intelligence, and we have incredible confidence in our engineers and in our design team and in, those in charge of this process. We are so excited to release this airplane, but instead we hear that it was designed by clowns. So this is not good. And I think this definitely contributed to the public announcement of Muilenburg's release and potentially contributed to his being fired in the first place. I don't know how much he had to do with the actual design of the plane itself, but just being the guy who happens to be at the top and the guy who is in charge, he's really kind of in the public eye at this point. Maybe he had a heavy hand in what's going on with the design of the plane itself. We don't know, but it definitely looks like the company had no choice but to let him go. And it looks like he was fired on. So hopefully Boeing will be able to recover from that. It's kind of a big mess. We'll see how or if they're able to really bounce back as a company. So we'll keep an eye on that in the future. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to have one more quick commercial break, and when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about robotics and how they're starting to be implemented in companies like General Electric. So hang tight, and we'll be right back.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
Welcome back. You are listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, my name is Maya. We just went over some news that was going on with Boeing losing their CEO, or rather firing their CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, and just a little bit of the fallout from that, what's going on with them, and their replacement. And now we have some interesting things to talk about with General Electric and UiPath. Most of you guys are familiar with General Electric as a company already. They've been around for a very long time. You probably have something from General Electric in your house. If you're not already familiar with the company, they probably produce your washer and dryer. It's likely. So moving forward, General Electric has started to upskill on the robotics that are being used in their workplace, specifically coming from a company called UiPath. This is really cool. I spent some time looking into how to download and implement UiPath, and actually went through this entire tutorial on how to utilize it and exactly what it does for you. Because when I first heard about this, and probably for a lot of you guys, when you think, oh my gosh, they're putting robotics in the workplace, and they start talking about things like, every worker in the office is going to have their own bot. For me, the first thing I thought of was little robots of some sort, just like sitting next to you, helping you out with tasks. I don't know, throwing away your trash, or grabbing you a cup of coffee. I don't know what robots would do. If my phone could grab me a cup of coffee, that'd be great. But it's not that. It's something totally different. Maybe some of you are a little bit more familiar with what robotics are as far as implementing them in the workplace. A lot of companies have already started to implement bots in the workplace. And it's not what you think. So first, I want to kind of describe what this means. So UiPath is a system, you can actually download it straight from the internet. It's really cool. And basically, it's a system that you download and install on your computer, and it's kind of like, you can think of it like an app on your phone, but it's an app on your computer. And it works kind of in stages, and there's different things that you can implement with UiPath for it to help you do, but it essentially condenses a whole pathway of things that you would do on your computer and puts it down into a simple keystroke. So there's a difference between, I want to just spend a little bit of time here describing what it does so that you can understand how it is going to simplify things in the workplace, and then we'll just talk about how UiPath is being introduced into GE and really what they're doing. So UiPath is a robotic process automation system, typically abbreviated as RPA. With RPA, with UiPath and a lot of the other companies that are in this industry, I suppose, they have ways of defining things. So there's a difference between an activity and a sequence, right? So an activity is just a simple thing that you might do, like closing a page on your computer or copy and pasting something. That's an activity. And then you have a sequence. So maybe you copy and paste something on your email, you minimize that page, you open up a new Word document, and then you paste that information onto the Word document. That's a very basic example, but that is a theoretical example of a sequence because you have multiple activities going on within the sequence. So that being said, you can utilize systems like UI to create your own sequences in order to minimize the amount of human activity that actually has to take place in order to get things done. So when you do something like creating a sequence, you can significantly reduce the amount of time that is spent on it, although you do have to put in, some effort in the beginning in order to create the sequence, but long term, it's definitely worth your time and significantly improves productivity. With UiPath, you can start with a blank document and basically write your own sequence in order to create the exact steps that you want to take. And then they also have flowcharts available. And the reason for the flowchart is if a sequence or some input has more than one potential output. So like if you log into your computer and the administrator can do one thing, but another user cannot do the same thing as the administrator, then you have two different options there. So that would be the purpose of the flowchart. Then you also have keyboard shortcuts. This was a really cool thing to me. The keyboard shortcuts can actually represent an entire sequence of activity. They can also help you out with those flowcharts. So the keyboard shortcuts, you could create, something where you hit Command G. And when you hit Command G, then it will open up Google and Google the GSMC News Podcast, the GSMC Business News Podcast, and then automatically you're listening to my voice in just a simple keystroke. So maybe you guys want to look into this. Sounds like a pretty good idea. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with UiPath, and it gets way more complicated than that, but I'm just looking at it from a really, really basic perspective, me coming at it from what are robotics. So now we have like a really, really fundamental, basic understanding of what these robotics mean. So now when we look at it from the position of General Electric, we can say, what does it mean for every worker to have a bot? What does it look like in the workspace or the workspace for everybody to have a bot? What that really means is that similar to when you get to work and you open up your email, you get to work and you check the time or whatever. It's going to be one of the fundamental things that you do from the perspective of UiPath is to go to work and open up UiPath, open up your bot, and basically open up this application that's going to really enhance the productivity of the rest of your day. They want it to be a fundamental element in the workplace. So General Electric noted that they selected UiPath specifically for a number of reasons. They didn't really specify what those reasons were, but upon a little bit of research, it looks like UiPath tends to be one of the more user-friendly systems as far as RPA goes. So, and it also has a free version if you're interested. Most of the other ones that are available, you have to have some sort of business subscription or you have to pay for them in some way. If you're interested in looking at RPA or kind of discovering it for yourself, I might be interested in taking a look at it. You can just download UiPath online. Just Google them. It's right on their website. It's actually pretty simple. And it would be really interesting to see what you can work out with it. Anyways, in 2016, that was when GE first introduced UiPath, and they really kind of wanted to shake things up. It looks like their CEO at the time was a really forward-thinking, kind of ambitious guy who wanted to really change the way that they were operating and the way that people worked at the company. So RPA was just kind of coming out at that time and just starting to get recognized by insurance organizations, and a lot of different banks actually are using RPA as well. So they selected UiPath and started working on it. 2017 was kind of used as a trial year and really an opportunity for them to prove the technology with GE as a working partner. So they started to implement it, started to utilize it within their company, and it was probably a little bit shaky at the beginning, but it looks like they had some success with it. So moving forward, 2018 was really an opportunity for them to determine the appropriate model and scale of the RPA that needed to be introduced in order to be a functioning aspect of GE. They started to build a resource team that was to support the bots so that if you had any issues with the application, similar to calling customer care or something like that, they had a resource team who knew everything about it, all the ins and outs. So now we not only have a company operating at its normal level, but we also have the robots introduced to their normal working system. And now we have a whole new team who is being instilled with this workspace. So, I mean, to me, what comes to mind with that, there's a lot of fear and concern when people think about automation as far as how that affects people's jobs. In my opinion, think about your typical workday. I mean, do you go to work and get everything done that you meant to do that day? If you do, then kudos to you. But a lot of people don't. And it's difficult to get everything done. And a lot of workers are overworked. And we work really, really long hours in the United States, okay? If you want to feel like you actually got everything done in a workday, then automation might be your friend. So I wouldn't shy away from it yet. And at the same time, because we have this kind of fear going on, what's going to happen with when everything is automated? What's going to happen when robots take over and we've got no jobs left? Right now, all I'm seeing is that the same people have their jobs, even though automation has started to take place in the workplace here. And in fact, more people are working for them now because we have a whole new company with UiPath, and we have a resource team hired and implemented at GE in order to back up these bots. So what I'm seeing out of this is a lot of automation, more productivity, a little bit more relaxation out of the employees themselves, and a lot of opportunity, actually. So I don't think that we should really shy away from the automation if this is what it's going to look like. There's a lot of other ways in which automation is being implemented into not only businesses, but all aspects of our lives. But if everybody's doing it the way that UiPath and GE are handling it, I think we're going to be okay as far as security in the workplace, because all I see here is an addition of jobs. So thanks for hanging in there with me today, you guys. We're going to take one more quick commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the 12 cities that have become major job magnets in the United States. This is pretty interesting because there are some cities that you probably would not have put on your list if you were looking for a major job opportunity. Stay with us, and we'll be right back to let you know what those cities are and how they did it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. You are listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Once again, my name is Maya, in case you forgot, and I am your host. So we just got done talking about some robotics. I apologize if I started talking really fast about robotics because I'm just super excited about it, and I think that it's a very interesting topic. We should be on top of this, guys. Robotics are going to start taking over the industries, all of them. You're really going to start seeing robotics anywhere that you see a computer. They're going to start becoming really the norm. As often as you open up an iPhone and you see applications on there that have been installed by the users and not just the ones that come on the phone, which is pretty much every iPhone, that's how much you're going to start seeing robotics. So keep an eye out for it. And I mean, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and do a little bit of research. Start to get to know it, especially if you work for a forward-thinking company. Or maybe you're the person who introduces it. That would be pretty interesting. So, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the top 12 cities that appear to be growing really quickly this year. According to an article that was posted on LinkedIn recently, actually just yesterday, the top 12 cities that are growing the fastest in the United States as far as average hiring rates. Now, the average hiring rate across the nation right now is 2.7%. However, the average hiring rate in these 12 cities is 6.5%. That's more than double. So that's pretty impressive. They all are focusing on a particular strategy, which is different than the majority of cities in the United States, and that is by focusing on one concentration. So whether it be healthcare or electronic development, manufacturing, all these kinds of different things, they really have been just picking their niche and sticking with it. And it's working because so many people are starting to gain jobs in these cities. So I'm just going to list what the cities are for you. And then we'll start talking about it a little bit. The first one is Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama has grown their hiring rate up to 14.1%. That's really, really good. I mean, especially compared to the national average, where their hiring rate is 2.7%, 14.1% hiring average. That's impressive. Second city is Kalamazoo, Michigan at 10.8% average hiring rate. Also impressive. And I don't think that I've ever heard of Kalamazoo, Michigan. So to everybody listening in Kalamazoo, Michigan, sorry guys, but you're on the radar now. And we are looking at you and we are proud of you. Next, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, sitting at a dead tie with Kalamazoo at 10.8%. Fourth in line is Fayetteville, Arkansas, followed by Evansville, Indiana, Cincinnati, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts, Detroit, Michigan, Allentown, Pennsylvania, also in Pennsylvania, the city of Erie, then Greenville, South Carolina, and finally, the 12th city is Des Moines, Iowa. So hats off to everybody in all of these cities who have come up with amazing strategies in order to grow their hiring rate by such incredible numbers. So how are they doing it? Let's look at really what's going on across these cities. Like we said, everybody's kind of focusing on a specific concentration of sorts. So manufacturing and healthcare tend to be the top two ways that people are growing. Number one, like we said, was Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama at 14.1% hiring rate is looking at manufacturing. That's incredible. So we'll just go down the line one more time. Huntsville, Alabama, we've got manufacturing. The following numbers 2 and 3, Kalamazoo and Raleigh-Durham. We've got healthcare in both of those places. Fayetteville, Arkansas. This one's interesting. The concentration that they selected is retail. Retail has been growing like crazy in Arkansas, and that's pretty impressive. When I first saw this number, I thought, well, this is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. There's a major university there. The University of Arkansas is located in Fayetteville. So my first thought was there has to be some sort of like retail strip, some shopping, something that's going on out there. Maybe they're hiring just like a whole bunch of college students or local kids. I don't know what's going on, but I looked into it just a little bit, and it turns out it is actually growing because Walmart's headquarters are located nearby in Bentonville. So I guess Walmart is really to thank for the major growth of retail positions available in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Looking at some of the other cities following in the line, Evansville, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, and Greenville, excuse me. They're all looking into manufacturing, just like Huntsville, Alabama, taking the lead. Manufacturing is kind of scattered throughout this list, but healthcare really is predominant. Healthcare, like we said in Kalamazoo and Raleigh-Durham, we've also got healthcare booming in Cincinnati, in Boston, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and in Erie, Pennsylvania. Healthcare is all over the place, guys, and it's apparently growing like crazy. The final city in the list is number 12, Des Moines, Iowa, looking at finance. That's pretty interesting to me. I want to also look at Huntsville, Alabama. They have a little bit of a list here that talks about this manufacturing that's going on in Huntsville, Alabama. Why is Huntsville growing so much? And the number 4 company on the top growing companies in Huntsville, Alabama is actually Boeing, which I'm interested by this statistic, and also the fact that we just talked about Boeing. So when we talk about the loss of Boeing's CEO and the major halt on production of the 737 MAX jetliner, and then we take a look at Huntsville, Alabama's major growth. I mean, 14.1% is incredible as far as the average hiring rate goes. I think that number is probably going to be affected by Boeing being on the list, and just by their recent happenings as far as having 2 plane crashes and major change of CEO. And I mean, they're taking a little bit of a hit because of all of this. So I don't know how Boeing stands up to the top 3 on the list in Huntsville, Alabama. But nonetheless, I do think that it will have a little bit of an effect as far as hiring rates go, because there's no way that with all of this going on with Boeing, they're still looking at major hires in the upcoming year, at least not in the same rate that they had been doing previously. So we'll take a look at it, but this has been pretty interesting to me. When you look across the board, there are so many different companies in this list across all of these cities. It's really not one company that's doing all the work as far as hiring goes. We've got One Main Financial, we've got Walmart on the list, we've got Advantage Solutions on the list, we've got Lenovo on the list, we have Kellogg, of course, and then we also have, like we said, Boeing, and actually one of the top hiring companies on this list from Huntsville, Alabama is the Huntsville Hospital. So guys, there's a lot going on right now as far as hiring goes, and it looks like these 12 these 12 cities, if you're in the market, if you're close by, if you live in one of those states and you're looking for work, it looks like that's the place to be. So that was an interesting little read for me today, and I didn't expect really most of those cities to be on that list. I personally live in Dallas, and we think, hey, Dallas is great. There's so much opportunity here, and there's so many jobs and everything, and there is. But man, I'm kind of surprised Dallas was not on the list. Not even close on the list. So that was interesting for me to read. Thank you for hanging with us today. We are going to wrap up this little section here and take another commercial break. When we come back, we are going to talk about how you can make 6 figures a year working at Taco Bell. So hang tight and we'll be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. You are listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Maya. I am so happy that you guys are sticking with me for this podcast today. We have so many things to talk about and so many things that I haven't even gotten to yet with y'all. So hang in for next year next year. You don't have to wait that long to talk to me again. I'm going to be back next week and we'll have so many more stories in line for you guys. Right now, I want to talk about, just now we wrapped up with the top 12 cities who are growing with their hiring rates in the United States. These cities were so unexpected. Honestly, there was a couple of cities on there that I've never been to and a couple of them that I haven't heard of. So if you guys are out there in those cities, good for y'all. I hope that everything is going really well for you guys. Hope you're having a great day and I hope you enjoy your workplace. Moving forward, we are going to talk about how you can make $100,000 a year working at Taco Bell. This is pretty cool, but I have to be honest, you are not going to make $100,000 a year working at Taco Bell as the cashier. I'm sorry. But you do have an opportunity to make $100,000 a year in general management at Taco Bell in a couple of select Midwest and Northeastern locations. They just released this information very recently, and Bloomberg was one of the first to report on it. Up to 450 locations across the Midwest and Northeast are going to be offering this kind of salary for their general managers. Currently, the general managers at Taco Bell are offered between $50,000 to $80,000 a year as their annual salary. But it looks like they are going for a different strategy at this point. They're really looking for talented managers, people who are go-getters, looking for the top of the top. And I don't think that they're really putting a lot of stipulations on it. They're also offering 24 hours of paid sick time every year to workers at the corporate-owned stores. So this is nice. I mean, there's a lot of stuff looking up right now. We just looked at 12 cities who are dramatically increasing their hiring rate by more than double the national average. That's awesome. We've also got robotics being implemented without fear because we have, jobs being introduced with those robotics. And as far as I was able to find out, nobody had lost their job because of robotics being introduced at GE. And now we've got the opportunity to work as a general manager at Taco Bell and make $100,000. I'm pretty proud of all of this news, just like what's going on in the world. And it's just so many things to look forward to. Now, in November, the unemployment rate in the United States fell to 3.5%, which is the lowest that the unemployment rate has been since 1969. In 1969, the unemployment rate was also 3.5%. So we're just matching that number right now. But that's a good number. We just went through this massive recession not that long ago. You guys remember it? And it was not good. And now that the unemployment rate is at 3.5%, it looks like not only are people being employed more, being hired more, but we also have a little bit of a raise in the average hourly earnings of the average employee. So everything is looking really good right now. We've got not only people being employed, but also being paid well. This is excellent. And Taco Bell is definitely latching on to this and noticing the trends in just the workplace in general. So with this offer of $100,000, I think what they're trying to do is change the way that work is perceived when you work at a fast food restaurant. I think that for a long time, it's been kind of considered an entry job or kind of looked down upon to a degree, to work at a fast food restaurant. And really what Taco Bell is trying to do is change that perception and change the way that their employees think about their jobs. I think this is incredible because especially if it starts to impact the way that the managers work, the way that they operate their businesses, and how they manage their employees, hopefully this will help out some of their hourly employees as well, because it's not just the managers who need to make money, it's everybody. So this is really good. I really think that this is implementing a lot of optimism in the workplace. And this comes at a contrast to other companies that are kind of taking a different approach. Olive Garden, the owner of Olive Garden, Darden Restaurants, and Shake Shack, etc., have recently, I wouldn't say complained, but have called out labor inflation and said that it's hurting their margins. They have too many people employed, and it's hurting their profit margins. To be honest, I think that's a good thing, and it seems like a strange thing to complain about, that you have so many people employed. It seems like an excellent thing. So overall, that comes at a contrast. So they are saying that they have too many employees and can't make their profit margins. Meanwhile, Taco Bell is apparently doing so well that they can now offer 450 general managers $100,000 a year. That's fantastic. Just one more thing to be proud of Taco Bell for, especially if you're just on your way for a late night run right now. Taco Bell on Thursday this last week also announced plans that they are planning to make all of their customer packaging recyclable. They want to make it recyclable, compostable, or reusable by the year 2025. Seeing that it is 2020 now, only a 5-year turnover to make all of your customer packaging environmentally friendly, reusable, compostable, recyclable. That's pretty fantastic. So if you are currently a fan of Taco Bell, then keep up the good support, because you guys are obviously supporting a company that values the environment, values their employees, and has some really good plans for the upcoming future. We'll see, and keep an eye on who else might be following in these footsteps, who else is doing super well as far as encouraging their employees and trying to implement a little bit more optimism in a lot of different ways. This was excellent. Thank you, Taco Bell. So that was just a little bit of good news for your day. We are going to take one more final commercial break, and when we come back, We're going to talk about Macy's stores, how they are about to close a couple of locations, maybe more than a couple, and what that means as far as how we shop from this point on. So stay with me, guys, and we'll be right back after this final commercial break.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the final stretch of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging with me today and listening to my first episode of the podcast here. Once again, this is the GSMC Business News Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And for the last time today, just so you cannot forget it, my name is Maya and I am hosting your show. Thank you so much for listening. So we just went over some really good news as far as Taco Bell's hiring, and actually we went over a lot of really good things today. We went over a lot of optimism as far as jobs are looking at. We are looking at robotics. We are looking at all sorts of things. And so I hope that you guys have enjoyed all of the good news. Probably the only negative news that we talked about so far is the potential loss of CollegeHumor. I'm really hoping that they don't go away because plenty of people have really, really enjoyed the entertainment brought by CollegeHumor and by their linked businesses. Once again, if you are interested in continuing watching what they're doing, their subscription service is called Dropout. So take a look at that if you're interested. Moving forward, following up this news about Taco Bell, which is a lot of good news, we have one final story to close on, which is the closure of 28 Macy's locations and one Bloomingdale's location as well. So this means a lot as far as the way that shopping is changing. I know that I personally have become a lazy shopper. Now, granted, I've always been a lazy shopper because unlike a lot of girls out there, I just don't like shopping. It's exhausting to me. And so when I finally created an Amazon Prime account, I think I was the happiest shopper out there. I really love having Amazon Prime. And I don't really shop in person for things anymore unless I actually really have to, or if I happen to need something like right now, which has happened to me a couple of times. But in general, I do everything online. I went to an event with my mom last year and I needed a ball gown. I bought a ball gown online. I didn't walk into a single store. I bought a ball gown online. You can buy everything online now. You don't even have to leave your house, which is great in my opinion. But it does have a little bit of a negative impact when you start to look at how that affects retail locations. So with Macy's closing 28 stores and one one Bloomingdale's location, I mean, it's a big deal. Right now, we've got 680 department stores operated by Macy's and 190 specialty stores. So really, 28 stores out of 680 is a pretty significant chunk of what they are operating. So when you look at that kind of closure, it tells you a lot about how sales are changing. When we look at just the stats from Macy's itself, it looks like the sales at the locations have fallen, looks like 0.6% during November and December of 2019. Holiday sales even dropped by 0.7%. This is a little bit of a big deal when you see that big of a drop over the holiday season even. We are looking at a quarterly decline of 1.75% in sales at Macy's from the retail locations. When you look at Macy's online sales, there's really no struggle. But when you look at the sales at the locations themselves, it's no wonder why they have to close these locations. Now, Macy's is not the only company that's experiencing this downfall of retail locations. Department stores as a whole have been struggling for the better part of this century. It looks like department stores overall from the last month of last year, from November 1st through December 24th of 2019, sales from all department stores across the United States fell by 1.8%. This is kind of a big deal. But with that being said, Macy's in particular has been struggling quite a bit. It looks like their market value is currently $5.5 billion, but they went down by over 40% over the last year. So what is it about Macy's themselves that's causing such a decline? I don't think that I personally can answer that question for you. We would probably have to talk to somebody from Macy's or someone who analyzes these kinds of markets. But it's not looking good for Macy's, to be honest. And when you think about it, I have seen, even in my own area, a lot of closure of Macy's locations, and I have not seen any new Macy's being opened. So it's not a huge shock to me to hear this information. When I choose to go shopping, I don't typically choose Macy's, not because I have anything against them, but they just don't have the selection that I'm looking for. Although when I look online, a lot of times Macy's has what I want. So I'm hoping that maybe they're just going to increase their online presence. I actually recently bought a couple of Christmas presents from Macy's just this year. So perhaps they're going to be able to kick it up a little bit in the online department so that they are not going to fall as a whole. So we'll keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, I really think that if companies are looking to continue to succeed, it's going to be all about digital marketing and online presence, because that's really just how people shop nowadays. Even when I want to buy clothes or when I'm buying gifts for someone else, it's just online. That's it. And you have to really, there's so many things that go into it. There's logistics, there's marketing, there's all these changes that go into place when you shift from a physical retail location into an online location. And I hope that Macy's is going to be able to step it up and make sure that their website is fully functioning, that their logistics team is fully functioning, that everything that they are doing is smoothly operating so that they can continue to function in the next upcoming years. Because, I mean, even compared to other department stores, it looks like Macy's themselves are struggling just a little bit. Well, I'm sorry to end you guys on some bad news for today, but hopefully y'all can hang on to all of the good news that we went over just earlier. I look forward to talking to you guys again next week. So thank you so much for listening to the GSMC podcast, again brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.